Baker Botts, LLP, provides podcasts for educational purposes only. They are not legal advice and are not intended to establish an attorney client relationship. This communication may constitute attorney advertising.
Welcome to AI Council Code. The AI Council Code is here to keep you up to date on all AI legal issues arising in the modern business frontier. And I'm your host, Maggie Welsh. On this podcast, we have discussed how a number of governmental agencies are addressing and thinking about AI. Most recently, we talked about the SEC, the FCC, and the FEC. And today we're going to focus on the DOJ and look into how the DOJ is thinking about AI and addressing AI. So we're joined by partner Brendan Quigley, who is in our New York office of Baker Botts and is a former federal prosecutor for the Southern District of New York. So hi, Brendan. Thanks for being on the podcast today. And why don't you introduce yourselves for our listeners?
Sure. Thanks, Maggie. It's great to be here. As Maggie said, my name is Brendan Quigley. I'm a partner here at Baker Botts in New York. I've been here just about 5 years now. Before that, I was a federal prosecutor in the Southern District of New York here in Manhattan for 7 years. My practice at Baker Botts consists of government enforcement and compliance matters with an emphasis on matters involving the DOJ and also commercial litigation. It's great to be here to talk about what the DOJ has said and done recently with respect to AI.
Great, thanks. And as we've talked about on this podcast, AI is percolating into all areas and all governmental agencies. So let's talk about the DOJ. How is the Department of Justice addressing AI?
Sure. Like many government agencies, and you gave the alphabet soup before, FCC, SEC, the DOJ has made a number of public pronouncements about AI, both through policy statements and also, frankly, through the cases that it's brought in recent months.
And what should companies be aware of? What should they be looking out for in these public statements and cases?
Sure. We tell corporations all the time that an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. And even for corporations committed to doing the right thing, there are always going to be bad individual actors out there. It could be counterparties, third parties, rogue employees. And that applies across the board, obviously, not just to AI, of course. But one of the things DOJ has done is published its and publicly updated its guidance to federal prosecutors on how it evaluates corporate compliance programs. And that framework is really critical in my practice, because oftentimes, if there is one of those counterparties, third parties, rogue employees who does something wrong, it's important to be able to express to the DOJ, if the facts and circumstances allow, that this is not a company problem. This is an isolated instance. And one of the things the DOJ looks very closely at is the company's compliance program. And again, the factors that they're supposed to look at are outlined in this document for evaluating corporate compliance programs. It was first made available in about 2020, and it's been periodically updated since then. And as it's been updated, it's gone from, I think, about 8 or 10 pages to now about 25 pages. Just recently, in September, the DOJ added, among other things, a section to that document about assessing AI-related risk. And it has always said, or said for a while, that one of the things to look at is how companies manage the management of emerging risks, and particularly risks around emerging technologies that the company uses in its business. Just in September, the DOJ updated the guidance to add 9 questions specific to how the company uses AI in its business and how the company has evaluated the risk, any risk from AI. So the questions it asks are, how does the company assess the potential impact of new technologies such as artificial intelligence on its ability to comply with criminal laws? Is management of risk related to the use of AI and other new technologies integrated into the broader enterprise risk management strategies? What is the company's approach to governance regarding the use of new technologies, such as AI, in its commercial business and its compliance program? And how is the company curbing any potential negative or unintended consequences resulting from the use of technologies, both in its commercial business and its compliance program? How is the company mitigating the potential for deliberate or reckless misuse of technologies, including by company insiders? To the extent the company uses AI and similar technologies in its business or as part of its compliance program, are controls in place to monitor and ensure its trustworthiness, reliability, and use in compliance with applicable law in the company's code of conduct? Do controls exist to ensure that the technology is used only for its intended purposes? What is the baseline of human decision making? What baseline of human decision making is used to assess AI? How is accountability over use of AI monitored and enforced? And finally, how does the company train its employees on the use of emerging technologies such as AI? And obviously, that was all a mouthful. We will put the complete, recently updated DOJ framework for the evaluation of corporate compliance programs in the show notes. But I think one of the big takeaways here, and obviously these factors will apply differently to every company. And that's really what the DOJ wants, right? They don't want out of the box. They don't want to see a company use an out of the box compliance program. They want to see a company's compliance program is tailored to the risk profile that the company faces given its business, what its business does, what types of technology it uses, away from the AI space, what geographies it operates in. But at a high level, it does provide insight into how the DOJ thinks about AI. And I think it's worth noting that here in this guidance, the DOJ is not taking a pro or anti AI stance. The guidance seems to at least implicitly recognize there are potential ways for AI to help with compliance, while also there are potential risks that it can be misused. And I think it also, in this vein, is that it's also, we're seeing the DOJ use AI in its own investigations. The government, having worked there for a number of years, in one sense, they have unlimited resources, but they don't have unlimited people, and there are only so many hours in the day. And in cases where there's big data, they have turned to AI, and I think we'll turn more to AI in the future. Examples of cases that we have seen and might see going forward where the government has used AI to investigate cases involving trading in securities or commodities, whether that's traditional insider trading to detect patterns of trading, or market manipulation to detect the manipulation of markets or stocks or commodities, analyzing in healthcare fraud arena, analyzing orders of certain kinds of prescriptions to see if doctors or pharmacies or healthcare providers are engaging in off-label or other prohibited types of drug sales. And also potentially in terms of price fixing, bid rigging, or investigations like that to look at prices that are being put in for contracts or a particular marketplace.
Interesting. And so it sounds like what you're saying is DOJ is using AI in a number of its own investigations and really almost taking a stance that AI can be used in the right ways at the right times. And there's an appropriate use for AI as long as you are doing and accounting for the risks associated with it.
Yep, I think that's right. And I think, again, to me, I recounted this, but to one that sticks out, one of the questions that sticks out is the one where it says, to the extent the company uses AI and similar technologies in its business or as part of its compliance program, are controls in place to monitor and ensure its trustworthiness, reliability, and use in compliance with applicable law in the company's code of conduct. So again, just they've recognized that it can be useful even in ensuring compliance, but you're not just going to be able to say, oh, we have AI, we have AI, we use AI for that. We use an AI model to detect improper trading by our employees, and that's going to be sufficient. Just like any other compliance function or compliance program, fraud detection program, or anything that you're using to ensure compliance with the law, what the DOJ is going to want to see is that the company has assessed, periodically the reliability of that for detecting misconduct.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question to you. What is the DOJ looking for in terms of these questions? Is it just that the companies considered these questions and are taking these questions into account, or is it something more that they've really done an analysis and having that accountability?
Yeah, and not to give too much of a lawyer answer, but it's really gonna vary from company to company. And again, they don't want to see. I wouldn't go into DOJ or certainly would not help a company design a compliance program by just checking off these 9 points without assessing, do these even all apply to our business, right? Some of them may, some of them may not. But I think they're going to want to see holistically that the company has analyzed its business, analyzed the risk profile of its business. And again, where that could be risks from different technologies companies using, it could be risks from geographies, it could be risks from counterparties that the company deals with. And then the company's taking that into account in its compliance program. And then with respect to the implementation of the compliance program, that there is regular assessment, it's hard to give a concrete answer at a specific time, but I would say certainly on an annual basis of how that program is working in practice. And it's obviously going to be different with AI, but we've seen this maybe an older example that DOJ expects to see is that companies should have what they would call a confidential reporting mechanism, what we would call a whistleblower hotline. If you operate in countries where people only speak Spanish and the people on the other end of the whistleblower hotline only speak English, that's not going to be considered effective. So again, hard to say specifically with respect to specific tools, but really common sense assessment of how the compliance safeguards or guardrails, whether those be AI based or not, are being used and implemented.
Let's talk about some of the DOJ cases that you're seeing. What has the DOJ decided to bring cases on, and how has that been shaping out?
Yeah. So the other way the DOJ speaks is for better or for worse, is through the cases it decides to bring. And I think we've seen this with different government agencies, both the SEC and the DOJ, but policy making through enforcement, some people take, I think, legitimate issue with that. But we have seen DOJ say they will bring AI related prosecutions related to the misuse of AI. And we just saw that recently in a case that the Southern District of New York, a U.S. Attorney's Office, mild office, charged earlier this month, in which they issue a press release when they have a major prosecution like this. And the press release emphasized that this was an AI related prosecution. And as alleged in that case, the defendant was indicted for making over $10 million by falsely boosting streaming numbers for AI related songs. And where the real fraud was in the misrepresentations he made to streaming music providers. In a little more detail, going back to, I think, 2017 or 2018, the defendant in this case created thousands of bot accounts on streaming platforms, and then he used those accounts to continuously stream songs he owned. And there was evidence that he knew that this would increase his royalty payments from the streaming service providers, and that he sought to avoid detection for this because he automated his streams across thousands of songs to avoid anomalous streaming as to any single song. And again, there's an indictment in the press release, have some incriminating emails. We need to get a ton of songs fast to make this work around the anti-fraud policies these guys are all using now. And as time went on, as the scheme continued, he turned to AI, teaming up with the CEO of an AI music company and a music promoter to create hundreds of thousands of songs using AI that the defendant could then fraudulently stream. So more songs, I guess more royalties. And the government also cited in the indictment and in the press release, and again, this is really the crux of what pushes into being a federal crime, is that the defendant made numerous misrepresentations to the streaming platforms, such as using false names and other information to create the bot accounts, making it appear as if legitimate users were in control of the bot accounts, when in fact the bot accounts were hard-coded to stream the defendant's music billions of times, and causing the streaming platforms themselves to make false statements by falsely reporting billions of streams of his music, even though those streams were in fact caused by the bot accounts rather than real human listeners. I think the takeaway here is hopefully no one listening to this podcast is using AI to create thousands of songs that they then stream using bots. The DOJ is making a point to emphasize that it is prioritizing its finite resources on investigations involving AI misuse. And so I think that has implications for companies in general. And I think as we talked about some of the policy guidance that the DOJ has given. If a company does become the subject of an investigation and AI is a big part of its business, even if that's not the focus of the investigation, those questions may come up when your attorneys, your outside counsel are interacting with the prosecutors and trying to decide whether, again, this is a company-wide issue, an issue where the company deserves some sanction, or where it's an isolated case of an individual misconduct or no misconduct at all. But I also think it has implications for companies that may be victims of AI misuse. We certainly field calls from clients periodically. This happened to me. I had a cyber breach. I had some other type of something happen to me. Is this something that prosecutors are going to be interested in? And I think a lot of times, sometimes our answer is going to be no. Particularly, this example's come up a number of times. Run-of-the-mill spear phishing schemes in which somebody wires money to a foreign account, and it turns out that it's not actually the account of their counterparty and somebody impersonating their counterparty. Those things nowadays in 2024, the government's going to say 9 times out of 10, that's really a private matter between the parties. And sorry, but we don't have the resources to devote to investigating and prosecuting that. I think if you are a victim of a crime where AI has been used against you or misused against you, that could be something that the government is more interested in. It's a consideration for us as we help clients who are in these situations evaluate, do I go to the government? Do I bring a civil litigation? Do I send a nasty letter? How do I react to this situation? So I think that does play into our considerations when we get these inquiries and clients' considerations as well.
And thinking about from a compliance perspective for the companies, what other potential risks do you see around AI?
Yeah, I think, again, from a compliance perspective, it's important that companies assess how AI could be misused in their business. And on the flip side, what are the potential use cases for compliance? And I think those 9 factors that we read through before, that's really what those are getting at a high level. And then, as I said before, if you are using an AI-based compliance tool, or any compliance tool for that matter, the DOJ is going to want to see how is that being validated? How is its effectiveness being checked? How do you know that you're detecting the right kind of misconduct and not just getting false hits or no hits for that matter? And then from an enforcement perspective, and I think I talked about this a little bit before, but I do think DOJ will continue to use AI and data to drive its investigations, particularly in those cases, like I said, that involve a lot of data. They have a finite number of federal prosecutors. There were maybe 15 of us at any one time, have a pretty wide mandate for white collar crime in Wall Street. So it's not like they have tons of people. And I think they will look to these models to help them identify, or these tools to help them identify potential misconduct in cases where there's, again, a lot of data. So market manipulation, insider trading, healthcare fraud, price fixing, bid rigging, cases like that. I think that you'll see DOJ use that. And it may not be, even if it's not what ultimately becomes admissible at trial or becomes the key evidence in their case, will be something that they use to identify potential targets of investigations.
Interesting, very interesting perspective and experience that you bring. So thank you for sharing your insights with us today. And thank you for our listeners to listening to AI Council Code. We're so glad that you joined us today. Stay tuned for additional podcasts and more insights on AI legal issues.
Thank you for listening to this Baker Bots podcast. Baker Bots has the experience, knowledge, and people to address our clients' most significant legal issues. For more information on Baker Bots practices, please visit us at bakerbots.com. This presentation is provided by Baker Bots LLP for educational and informational purposes only. It is not legal advice and is not intended to establish an attorney-client relationship. Under the rules of certain jurisdictions, this communication may constitute attorney advertising.